What's going on? This is TJ Murphy, and welcome to another episode of Adventurous Entrepreneurs. My guest today is Tom Schwab, founder of Interview Valet and a trailblazer in podcast interview marketing. Tom's journey is anything but conventional. He's gone from running nuclear power plants in the Navy to direct sales and ultimately building a thriving business helping thought leaders amplify their voices through podcast guesting. In this episode, Tom shares the pivotal lessons he's learned, including how to systematize complex processes, the value of persistence in building meaningful relationships, and why introverts have a unique edge in the modern marketing landscape. He dives into the evolution of podcasting as a marketing channel, explains why meaningful conversations beat the one funnel away mindset, and offers insights into living a well-rounded, purpose-driven life. Discover how to align your marketing strategy with your personality, build trust with your audience, and create a business you never want to retire from. Plus, hear Tom's inspiring plans for his upcoming sabbatical on the Camino de Santiago and the lessons he's learned about embracing life's adventures without delay. So, whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting your journey, this episode is packed with actionable wisdom, inspiring stories, and a fresh perspective on what it means to build a business with impact. Just a few of the golden takeaways Tom's going to share with you in this episode are the power of systems and persistence, why introverts excel in podcast marketing, why conversations trump funnels, aligning marketing with personality, and designing a life you don't want to retire from. So get ready. And without further ado, this is me and Tom Schwab. Welcome to the Adventurous Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, TJ Murphy. Since quitting my corporate 9-to-5 and starting a business while backpacking through Asia back in early 2017, I've had the privilege of learning from some incredibly adventurous entrepreneurs. Through these conversations and my own journey, I've learned that much like in life, entrepreneurship is an adventure. On this podcast, I explore the journeys of top-performing leaders in their fields. These wide-ranging conversations include tactical business advice, how I built this insights, lessons in leadership, life hacks, travel stories, favorite hobbies, and insights into living a purposeful and joy-filled life. Adventures await us, so let's dive in. Hey, Tom, welcome to Adventurous Entrepreneurs.
Hey, TJ, I am thrilled to be here to talk with you and let the world listen in.
Oh, well, I am very excited. Having done my due diligence for this, I know you're going to have so much gold to share with everyone. So I'd love to start with a bit of background on the journey because, Tom, you've had quite a journey from the Navy to nuclear propulsion to marketing. Can you take us back to the beginning and just share how these diverse and very just different experiences have shaped your approach to business and life?
Well, I think if you look from the start going forward, it's like they don't make sense. But if you look in the rearview mirror, the dots connect. And everyone taught me something that I use in business today. And so I'll start out. I graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. To all the taxpayers, thanks for paying for my education. I was an engineer. My first job out of college was running nuclear power plants in the Navy.
Wow.
And people are like, wow, that's amazing. And it's like, no, what it taught me is that you can systemize things. You can do processes. You don't need PhDs in nuclear physics in order to run a nuclear power plant, right? The average age of somebody running them is 21 years old and they're high school educated. Now, They're smart people, they're motivated, but they've got a system there. So often now when people in business say, well, you don't understand my business, I could never teach it to anybody. It's too complicated. Like, you don't understand it, right? If they can teach people how to run a nuclear reactor in under a year, you could teach somebody how to do your job. So that sort of taught me that. And then I went to corporate America and found out I don't like corporate America. But in 18 months on the inside, I learned operations, learned the finance side of things. And I knew I wanted to go out into sales. So I took direct sales to orthopedic surgeons, straight commission, and loved it, right? And it was a risk. I think at that time I was probably too young and dumb to know it. I remember my dad telling me I was a fool when I left the Navy. And he told me I was a dang fool, or words to that effect, when I took a straight commission job. He's like, come on, you're married, you've got kids, you got a mortgage. And I'm like, I can do this.
Yeah.
So
confidence in yourself.
Yeah. And, just we make it happen. Yeah. And so became one of their top sales reps, was a distributor, ran the distributorship in Michigan, sold that back. And then about that time, we had this little sideline business. And I had read a book by two smart guys out of MIT, Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah, called Inbound Marketing. And they went on to start HubSpot. And I can still remember calling them and saying, hey, has anybody ever used this for e-commerce? And they said, no, but it should work. I'm like, yeah, let's give it a try. So we became their first e-commerce case study, sold that off. And then when I was in my sabbatical period, I had some people were asking me, well, how'd you grow your business? And I said, well, we grew it with guest blogs, but they don't work anymore. So I hypothesized you could use podcast interviews the same way. And so we started to test it. It worked. And built up Interview Valet, which is a podcast interview marketing agency that helps thought leaders get on podcasts as a marketing channel. And so it's like everything sort of leads to the next. The idea that you know exactly what you're going to do when you graduate high school. If somebody says that, they're either lying to themselves or lying to you. I think it's evolutionary.
Oh, 100%. When I graduated high school, I was honest. I have no idea what I want to do. I just need to get out there and even see what's out there in the world. I grew up in this tiny town. I've lived in this bubble. I need to go experience some things. So it sounds like you were very fortunate to be able to do that. And I've got a bazillion rabbit holes I want to go down already. But before we get too far from it, I always, when direct sales comes up early in someone's career, I know that there was some major lessons learned that have probably carried through and helped you be as successful as you've been. When you were doing that direct sales role, were there any like key either ways of going about sales or things that you learned that have really stuck with you throughout your career and you feel like that skill set has helped you become as successful as you've been?
I think some of it is, if you want to call it resiliency, right? Unless somebody threw me out of their office and, called the police on me, I would be like, oh, there's still a chance that they might buy something from me. Now, I only had a limited number of clients in my territory, right? I think there was like 57 orthopedic surgeons. So I had to build the relationship with all of them. And I can still remember Bob Schaefer, great orthopedic surgeon. He became one of my best clients. And I remember him telling my sales manager one time, he said, I didn't know if Tom was the stupidest person in the world or the most persistent, but he kept coming back. And he'd come back with more and more things. And he said, after about a year, I felt sorry for him. And, I threw him a bone.
Throw the kid the bone, yeah.
And he said, that's like throwing the birds bread to get him to go away. And he's like, then he was even more persistent. Fast forward, he was giving Stryker over $1 million worth of business a year. And that just came from my persistency with that. And so I think it's that way of having the long view of it and trying not to take things personally.
Yeah. You got to have tough skin to be resilient in the sales game, but doing it the right way, not burning bridges, building those relationships for the long term. That's going to serve you in any field.
Because I saw other people that would come in and burn out really quickly because they would come out and they would insult the wrong person, right? They would insult the woman behind the front desk, not realizing that was one of the orthopedic surgeon's sister-in-laws, right? You do that, that entire office is off limits to you. Or even being in the hospitals, right? Being nice to everyone, be it the nurses, the janitors, right? Because all of a sudden that nurse that you're always nice to and show respect to, all of a sudden she brings it up in conversation. Hey, Dr. So-and-so just had an awful experience putting in a total knee. He's ready to throw the Depew rep out of here. Hey, here's some things you may want to talk to him. It's like that is pure gold. And just realizing that that everybody can either be there to help you or to hurt you.
Amen to that. Yeah, you need to build those strategic allies, especially the person behind the desk. That's the gatekeeper. You need to be best friends with that person. Bring them their favorite gift, their favorite coffee, whatever it is. But that's the one that's ultimately going to get you through to who you want to talk to. So.
And teaching and treating everyone like they're important.
Absolutely.
Right? Whether or not it's the janitor at the hospital or it's the lead orthopedic surgeon, right? Both of them are valuable just as human beings, and if you treat them as such, they'll treat you as such too.
Yeah, good values in business, and more importantly, just in life in general. Yeah. So, Tom, you've become known for really highlighting the marketing strengths of introverts, which I'm very curious about, particularly through podcast guesting. Why do you believe introverts have a unique advantage when it comes to this medium?
I think the world is changing. Right? The idea that it used to be the sales reps was this carnival barker, right? That person that was the loudest one was selling everything. And as I say that, people probably get this idea of like, oh yeah, I know this person. They're the insurance salesman. They're the used car salesman. And if you look at that, their jobs are getting replaced very, very quickly by people that are either AI or introverts, right? You think of like CarMax and Carvana and all the rest of those. They're like, we've had enough with this haggling and prices. The clients don't like it. I heard somebody refer to it as, you're not a sales rep anymore, you're the ambassador for the company. And that works a whole lot more. And I think the world is changing. It used to be that if I was going to go and talk to thousands or tens of thousands of people, I better like being around that many people. I better be an extrovert. Whereas now, as an introvert, we could have this one-on-one conversation. Mm-hmm. This is the same conversation we'd be having if we were having a cup of coffee, right? But now it's recorded. It can be shared with the world. And I think introverts have a unique advantage that they listen better. And I think that's important for being a sales rep. They think through things better, and they're better on one-on-one conversations. And today, where everybody is about more, you've got to think about how can you do it one-to-one and then scale it, right? Yeah. One of our clients, Gail Moody Bird, she's the CMO of LinkedIn Sales Navigator now. And she mentioned something about that the world is getting more efficient at things that are less effective. And so, in the time we've talking here, you and I both could have sent 1 million emails. They all would have gone to spam, or we could have this conversation. And it's effective and it's scalable there. And I think introverts have a unique advantage on that. And I don't think they realize it. I really don't think companies realize it yet. And I think we're going to see it change very drastically in the next decade.
Very interesting. Do you prescribe as an introvert yourself?
I do.
Okay.
And in some ways, I look at it as if it's not a spectrum, at least it's in relation to. Mm-hmm. So when I'm a mechanical engineer. With mechanical engineers, you would say I'm probably more on the extroverted side. But as entrepreneurs, I'm probably more on the introverted side, right? If you and I are at a conference, I will make an appearance at that big party and the networking event that night, but I'm not going to stay long. And it's going to take all the energy to be
drain you. We're very similar in that way. I can put it on for a little bit, but I'm drained at the end of the night.
It's drained, and I got to go back and recharge. Now, if you want to get together at 6:30 in the morning for breakfast, one-on-one, I'll be there all day long, right? Yeah, because that's when I can have those interactions. And I live in rural Southwest Michigan. And so it's really nice that I can have the one-on-one peace time here. I couldn't live in downtown New York City. I can visit, but I can't live there. But I can still connect with people through the internet.
Yeah. So I'm curious, especially early on, like how did you personally navigate the challenge of putting yourself out there, especially stepping into being a CEO and a public figure?
I fought it for a long time because I didn't want to, right? I said, I don't want to be the Tom Show, right? And if you look at my website of any company that I have ever had, my picture is not on the front because I think, well, for me, it would be vanity, right? It's not about me. I want to put the pictures of our clients up there.
Yeah.
I want to put the pictures of our podcast hosts that we work with, right? They're the hero of this. I'm not. Right. And early on, I was always, I don't want to be the face of the company. And my last company, I would say I was more the CEO, right? I'll do all of these things. And I realized that today there has to be a face of the company, right? You think of any major company out there, maybe GM and Coke are a little bit different.
Yeah.
But for most companies, you know who the founder is, right? Tesla, you think Elon Musk. You think of different companies. And one of them that we worked with early on, Gavin Zaklinski, he was the founder of Acuity Scheduling. And he built the entire business up through podcast interviews, going out there, telling his story and saying he built it for his mom originally. And then it morphed into this. And his team is in New Jersey. If you look at who was the first calendar program to get acquired, it was Gavin. And Acuity got bought by Squarespace. And, we've talked about this. I swear it's because there was that face with it. Schedule once, Calendly. I don't know. They're good. They all do about the same thing, but I don't know if it's somebody in Bangladesh. But once I heard Gavin's story, I was an Acuity customer for life, right?
Wow.
As long as he owned it, I was going to be there, right? Somebody else comes out with a little bit cheaper or, a new feature. It's like, no, I like working with Gavin. And so I think that is important. And as I started to see that, I realized that I had to be the face of the company, and I call CEO now Chief Evangelist Officer because my job is to evangelize for our category of podcast interview marketing, to evangelize for our clients and for our company. Now there are people called CEOs, and I've got friends that do that, and they usually have to deal with the SEC and investors and all the rest of that. That's not the job I do. I want to be the Chief Evangelist Officer.
I love that. I love that you also point out just the storytelling component. This one-to-one podcast medium is so great at getting people to hear and resonate with the personal brand, the story that you have. And like for me, I've hired coaches because I saw them on a podcast and their story, their background resonated with me. I never would have gotten that from just, looking at a review or on their website, actually getting to hear it from them and hear the emotion behind everything that they went through to get to this place of being an expert in that field. I just find it really, as you said, it makes you an evangelist for that brand. Once you start working with them, you're bought in emotionally.
Yeah. And there's a fundamental difference between products and services. So a product can be sold, a service has to be bought, right? So if we're selling microphones, right? You can sell a microphone because you can demo it, you can return it, you can trial it, all the rest of that. And so that can be sold. But a service like coaching, that's bought because you can't demo it. You have to understand the person. It's that know, like, and trust. And so I think that's often where businesses and entrepreneurs get in trouble is they start to say, well, this worked for this person, so I can apply it too. Well, they're selling a product, you're selling a service. Or, Brendan Bouchard and Tony Robbins, they do funnels. So I've got to do funnels too. They've also been out there for 20 years. People know who they are. And I think,
Giants.
yeah, too often we start benchmarking against the wrong people, right? If somebody's got a professional services business with consulting, they're like, oh, I need to do Facebook ads and drive them to this master class. And I'm like, oh, is that how Bain Capital, is that how Ernst and Young, is that how McKinsey, all the big consulting firms, is that how they get business? It's like, no, they go on platforms and they have their people talk. Now, granted, most of the platforms they own, they're their conferences, they bring the people in, but you can do the same thing by being seen as a thought leader, by being out there on podcast interviews that your clients are listening to.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the funnel piece. You've talked about how the one funnel away mindset can be detrimental for everyone, but especially for introverts, as I read. Can you explain why this approach doesn't work and how meaningful conversations can actually lead to better results?
I can give you personal experience on
Please.
that, right?
Yeah.
The idea of one funnel away, and listen, I'm an engineer, right? I love automation. I love all of that. But this idea that if I just sit in my office for a week and build this beautiful funnel, right, that my business will grow. I've spent weekends that way and it didn't work, right? And people that were much wiser than me, much senior than me would ask, did you talk to any clients? No, I was building a funnel. It's perfect. Huh.
Get out there and talk to the clients.
Why don't you talk to the clients? See what they want, right? Yeah. Especially for most of our businesses, we don't need, 10,000 people that come through, right? Yeah. We need a handful of clients or something like that. So, why do you want more and more leads? So I think often I will say I or other people will hide behind that automation as opposed to going out and talking with the clients. And, clients are wonderful people. They'll tell you what they love and what they loathe, right? All you got to do is listen to them, give them more of what they love and less of what they loathe. That works really well there. So one of the things I always point to is that you're not one funnel away, you're one conversation away. And I look in my life, the best clients I've ever gotten came from conversations and personal referrals. The best employees that I've gotten have come through conversations. The best, partners, business partners have come through that. Heck, even my bride, she came from somebody personally introducing that knew us both, right? I did not, have this perfect funnel, run Facebook ads, and boom, out of 7 billion people I targeted, Karen came out of it. No, it's conversations.
Absolutely. My experience is almost exactly the same. When I got started building my agency back in 2017, I thought, I've got to have the perfect website. I have to have all of the automations for our lead nurturing sequences ready to go on the back end, and spent like a month and a half building all that out when I had never even gotten out and told people what I was doing. And sure enough, TJ gets out into the community. He starts talking to the right people. Actually, my very first client, who ended up turning into multiple six figures over a couple of years, was just me talking about what I was doing, sitting in the sauna at the YMCA. And just so happens that I'm talking to one of the big real estate developers in our town, and he needed exactly what I was offering. So couldn't agree more. You got to have the meaningful conversations and just get out there and learn what people need. What are the problems that you can solve, and then build your sale around that.
Yeah.
So you emphasize the importance of matching your marketing channel to your personality. We're not all made the same. What works for a Tony Robbins may not be the best approach for you. Can you share how business owners can really figure that out? Like, how do they identify the right channels for themselves, and why that's crucial for long-term success?
Maybe it's easier to figure out what you don't want as opposed to the right ones. And too often people will say, we got to be everywhere on everything. And I think of a client that came to us and I said, why do you want to do podcast interviews? And I'll never forget his answer. He said, because I think most of digital marketing is like advertising above a urinal. And I said, okay, you got to explain that one.
Yeah, please do.
He's like, my clients, are male, right? They're all in front of urinals. I would not advertise there though, because I'm a high level coach. I'm a high level consultant, right? And he said, if I was seen there, it would hurt my brand. They're there, but they're not making a buying decision. He said, if they saw me on a billboard or a park bench or a bus that went by, that would actually hurt me. He said, I want to be where it helps my brand authority, my brand recognition, where people are making their decisions, right? So he wanted to be seen on very professional podcasts. He wanted to have conversations with people that were thought leaders in the industry. And I think too often we're told that we got to be everywhere. It's not only marketers that's telling us this. My daughter, when she was in middle school, she's graduated from high school now. She came in and she was helping me. She's like, Dad, you need to be on Instagram. I said, well, why? Because everybody is on Instagram. I said, well, who's everybody? Well, me and all my friends.
Yeah, my friends.
And I'm like, it would be creepy if I was on there with you and all your friends. So I think sometimes when people say, oh, you got to be on TikTok, are your clients on TikTok? So figure out where your clients are. And then I think also figure out what meshes best with you. So I've written a lot of blogs in my life. Every one of them has felt like a homework assignment, right? I can speak, well, I don't know. I think I can speak easier than I write. And so the idea of talking to people, answering questions, I can create in that way and then take that transcript and have somebody else clean it up and turn it into blogs or turn it into tweets or whatever that is to repurpose that content. So I think sometimes people have to look at what their strengths are. If you are a writer, man, then write. If you're a speaker, then speak. If you like having conversations with people, do that. There's a great book out there by Marcus Sheridan called They Ask, You Answer. And people will say, well, what do I talk about? What do I write about? Whatever people are asking, right? If they ask a question, chances are there's other people that are answering it or asking it too.
Yeah, 100%. And just within the medium of being a podcast guest, or, for me, starting my podcast, my ultimate goal was to become a better communicator, to have conversations where I could really sharpen that sword and learn in the process, both being on podcasts and getting asked questions, reflecting on my experiences and really revisiting those to strengthen, oh yeah, I have learned some things and I have applied them well, and they're going to be valuable for other people to hear. And on the other side of the mic, getting to learn from people like you that have had completely different experiences. Some overlap in terms of what we learn, but lots of things that I can then go and apply in my life. So it's a unique format, it's a unique medium to really be able to give and take if you're sitting on both sides of the mic. And I'm curious for you, you've seen, I can't even imagine, thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of people use your platform. And I can only imagine there's been some amazing success stories from them being on other people's podcasts, or maybe even for your own visits to being a guest. Like, where have you seen that impact in people's business or just personal growth, being a guest on podcasts?
And I'm glad you said the word impact, because that's what we're trying to maximize for, is the impact. And so you impact the people that hear you. Right. So we hear from clients, somebody heard me on the podcast interview. They called, they became a client. Someone else, he got on a dental podcast and it was like fish in a barrel. And he's like, I love dentists. I got a couple clients from that. The next 6 months, all we did was dental podcasts. And now his accounting practice is all on dentists. I love to hear podcasts, and I'll hear a podcast host refer to my friend, and they'll be pitching this guy's company. And I'm like, we introduced them as a guest 6 months ago, and now they're working together on things. So
Wow.
that idea of exposure brings opportunity. And that's the impact on the people that hear you. But there's also the impact on the SEO value, because every time you're on a podcast, the search engines are indexing that. There's the backlinks. And we've seen people, I can think of one, he came to us early on and he had the same name as an NFL football player. So he wasn't ranking for his name. And his company name was the same as some like 90s movie.
Okay.
And so
He wasn't showing up for that either.
Aaron Walker and View from the Top was not showing up. And so he's like, how do I get found on Google? I'm like, change the name of your company or change your name. He didn't want to do either. So the idea was, well, let's get out there and be on podcasts. And every time they gave him a backlink. And with time, he started to come up higher and higher in the searches. So podcast interviews can impact search engine rankings, right? Which helps get leads that way too. And here we are in the summer of 2024. And what we're seeing is that podcast interviews can even impact the large language models, ChatGPT. And over the last 90 days, Interview Valet has seen people coming to us with leads. And we say, where'd you find out about us? Oh, I asked ChatGPT and yours was the first one that came up.
Nice.
Oh, and clients are telling us, yeah, we're getting leads from ChatGPT. And you put in their category and all of a sudden it gives you 5 companies. Theirs is number 1 and it's saying things that they say in the podcast interviews. So there's a new field out there now called LMO, language machine optimization. And next month at HubSpot, they're going to be talking about this a lot more at their inbound conference. Yeah. The idea is, ChatGPT has already read everything on the internet, right? So now they're going and watching the videos. They're listening to the podcasts. And the idea behind this is, nobody knows how they rank, how the search engine or how the large language models are. But they can, from afar, look at it and they think there's 2 major factors. The first one is sentiment. So is somebody talking positively about you or negatively about you? So when you're on a podcast, I don't want to say it's not a fluff piece, but it's not a gotcha piece, right? Yeah. Everything that's in a podcast is going to be positive. So right there, that sentiment impacts that. And then there's another factor that they're calling share of voice. So how much is this brand out there talking about something compared to other ones? And so one of the things that we're seeing, and the experts that are looking at it, they're like, yeah, podcasts and podcast interviews should have a major impact on making sure that ChatGPT refers you. So you had mentioned impact. When you're on a podcast interview, you want to impact the people that are listening, the search engines that are listening, and the AI that's listening, because
it's going to be very important in the years to come.
Yeah, the days of keywords is like Y2K. There's no more keywords. There's no more keyword stuffing. It's like they're listening to everything, and you want to be heard.
You want to be heard. Yeah, you mentioned HubSpot. I know I was just playing around with it earlier. They have a new grading tool that's like their main lead magnet that will show you what those large language models see about your brand. You put in your domain and it'll kind of gauge the share of voice and the sentiment and grade you on that to see, are you reputable in the eyes of ChatGPT? I think it is just ChatGPT right now, but it'll eventually expand it to Gemini and Claude and everything else. So as usual, HubSpot's pushing things forward and innovating in really cool ways.
And it's an exciting time because with SEO, it used to be white hat and black hat, right? Yeah. And there was always people that were scamming it. And they really believe now that with the large language models that you're not going to be able to scam it, right? They're listening to everything. And so just by keyword stuffing when you talk, is not going to help you. It's going to hurt you. So I love that finally we're at the point where the white hats win. The people that have a good sentiment win. The people that are out there educating, they win.
They win. Me too. Here to that. So Tom, in business, it's not all about the hustle and grind. And this podcast is about entrepreneurship. But one of the biggest hurdles that we all face is, how can we live a well-rounded life doing the things that bring us joy with the people that we care about most? How do we build that freedom through the work that we do? So I always ask, what does that look like for you? How do you balance things or blend them? How do you create that freedom and space for yourself to do the things that matter most?
Yeah, I think the idea of work-life balance is a myth, and I don't know whoever came up with it. Right? Maybe it's from, when you work 40 hours in the factory, then there's work-life balance. But as I look back throughout time, there was work-life integration, right? My great uncle was a dairy farmer. There was no work-life balance, right? The cows needed to be milked at the same time every day, whether it was Christmas, Easter, or his vacation, right? So he worked when he needed to work, but he also drove the bus because he could drive his kids to school back and forth with that, because it gave him that flexibility. And that's one of the things that I look at, is that how can I make this part of my life so that I'm working with people that energize me, both from team members and from clients, and they don't, drain the energy out of me? How can I build a business and build a life that I don't want to retire from? I've got counterparts, people my same age that are counting the days to retirement. And I understand, because they've been used and abused by their employer, and they just want it to stop. I look at it as, I don't want it to stop. And it's fun. It's energizing. As I get older in the business, I want to be an elder in the business where I can teach other people, that I can add to it. I can help people on the team. I'd rather be an elder than just elderly. And Christopher Lochhead from the Category Pirates talked about this, is that when you're maybe, I don't know, between your 20s and 40s, that's sort of the Luke Skywalker days, where, you're out there, you're doing it, you're killing it, you're learning. And then from the 40s to 60s, maybe that's the Obi-Wan, right? Mm-hmm. So you're the manager. That's probably where you're making a lot of the money and all the rest of that. But too many people at the end of that say, okay, and now I'm finished. No, there's another stage, right? You get to be the Yoda. You get to be Yoda. You've earned that spot. And why not? Be Yoda for, from 60 to 80, and then retire. So that's what I'm looking at, is having a life and a business that I design, and not that I have to retire from.
Yeah. Well, you fit the mold of an adventurous entrepreneur in the context that I see it, because you have succeeded in designing your business around the life that you wanted to achieve. So thank you for sharing that with us. And you've mentioned that you're more excited about what tomorrow holds than any yesterday. So what's on the horizon for you, Tom? What has you particularly excited?
Well, I learned that from Dan Miller. He's a great mentor. Dan Miller wrote a book called 48 Days to the Work You Love. We lost him earlier this year. He went from super productive to getting diagnosed, and then a month later, he had passed on. But he believed that every decade you should you should 10x your results every decade. And it's like, well, how? Well, you know so much more. You've got so many more contacts, right? You've done this. And so from that standpoint, he was always more interested in the future than the past. And so I'm the same way on this. So here we are. We're recording this at the end of the summer in 2024, and I'm about 2 weeks away from being on my first sabbatical that I have ever taken. So I'm taking 5 weeks off. My wife, my bride, and I are going to Europe. and there's a trail called the Camino de Santiago.
Oh, amazing. You're going on the Camino.
The Camino. We're doing the full 550 miles. And people say, well, why are you doing that? And my answer is, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do for the second half of my life.
That's amazing. I'm so excited for you guys. That's on my bucket list. So
don't put it off, right?
No?
I figure there's internet there. I can check in on the business. I don't want to.
I was going to say, you shouldn't have to, though. Can you fully unplug? Is that your goal, or will you kind of go in with the intention of checking in every now and then?
I know that I will feel better if I check in, right? So that I am not abandoning my team, but also I trust them, right? I know they're going to do better than when I'm there. And I learned I relearned a lesson in the last month here. My roommate from college passed away very quickly from brain cancer. It's really sad. Quite a few Navy pilots that fought on the war on terrorism have paid the price because they were up there with the radar, and they get brain cancer from that. And one of the things that we used to say at the academy is, what did you learn from this? Because the idea was, you don't want to learn from your own mistakes. It's painful and stupid, right? Learn from someone else's mistakes.
From others' mistakes, yeah.
So I'll never forget when he called me and he told me the news. I just had to ask him, so what did you learn from this? And his point was, don't put things off, right? If you want to do something, do it. Every day is a gift and not a given. And even with entrepreneurship, right? Go ahead, give it a try. It's either going to be epic or it's going to be a complete failure. But you get to figure this out. You're either going to be a hero or it's going to be, oh, well, I learned something from that. Exactly. But, my roommate used to always say, don't die not knowing. And so that's something that I'm trying to live out now.
Yeah. Amazing. Tom, tell everyone a little bit about Interview Valet and what it's all about before we wrap things up here, and kind of ask where people can connect with you, because I'm sure people are going to want to connect with Tom and find out what you're doing in life.
So Interview Valet is a podcast interview marketing agency. We believe that this idea of breaking through the noise is laughable. We're all yelling. Nobody's getting heard. Better to get in on the conversations people are already listening to. And this is what we've been doing for over a decade, helping thought leaders get on targeted podcast interviews so they can use it as a marketing channel. So we're helping coaches, consultants, nonfiction authors. We're helping professional service providers, category designers get on the right podcast, helping them turn the listeners into leads, into customers, and then helping them repurpose all of that. We've been doing it for about a decade now. We've got a team of 22 people, all remote. Not everybody wants to live in Kalamazoo, Michigan with me. So I always say, if that's something that interests you, you can always just go to interviewvalet with a v.com/AE, right? We'll make it easy for adventurous entrepreneurs. There's a quiz there, personal assessment, 10 questions. Will podcast interview marketing work for you? I wrote a book. You can buy it on Amazon, or if you go there, I'll send you a free copy of Podcast Guest Profits, How to Grow Your Business as a Targeted Interview Strategy. And then finally, all my social media is there. If you want to talk, I'll put my calendar scheduling link there. All of that stuff will be back there at interviewvalet.com/AA.
Well, you guys heard it straight from Tom. It is an incredible company. It's an incredible service. If you're a longtime listener of this podcast, it's where we've gotten a lot of our guests. People like Dr. Bakhtari, Louis Scott, all came through Interview Valet. And if you're thinking about wanting to get on more podcasts, or maybe you've never been on a podcast, and now that you've heard Tom share all the reasons why it's an incredible thing for you to be doing, there's no better way to get started than talking to Tom and his team. So Tom, I appreciate you jumping on, sharing all this gold with us, and have an awesome time on the Camino. It's going to be an incredible adventure.
Thank you, TJ.
To all of our adventurous listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, download, and share this on social media or with someone you know will get some value from it. Leaving a review goes a long way in helping people find the show, and I personally appreciate reading them when they come in. So please go drop one if you have the time. We'll see you all next week, and remember, whether we're talking about business or the things that bring us joy outside of work, life is meant for exploring. So go out there and live it one adventure at a time.